All right. Well, hey, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Heromakers Podcast. And I feel like I should be like ringing a bell because it's March.
It is.
And are you seeing flowers up there or trees or no?
Not yet.
Not. Not. That is so sad. I know. We're not either, but I was hopeful.
Balmy. It was balmy plus 8 Celsius yesterday, which is pretty warm. So everybody was running around. It was beautiful.
Yeah. Well, it's goofy because this morning it was 40 here and I just didn't even want to wear my jacket because it just felt like a heat wave. I'm like,
wow.
Glorious. Yeah.
Happy International Women's Day.
Happy International Women's Day. That's true. And you guys, we have an amazing woman on the podcast. And that was a great segue. But yeah, I mean, seriously, you guys, I mean, so many amazing women out there. And just, yeah, go back and listen to our podcast with so many amazing women that we've talked to. And so, Ann, what a great episode we have today. And this was before we started recording this, you guys, we were talking about, I looked back in episode 8, we talked to a woman named Rebecca Bender, who was formerly she was a victim of sexual trafficking. And now she's doing amazing things in terms of training law enforcement, helping women to get their education, all that kind of thing. So hop back and listen to that because we are going to talk about women survivors. And we're going to talk about women who have been through trauma and addiction and prostitution and sometimes human trafficking. And Dorris, we have on the podcast today, Dorris Walker-Taylor, who has it's really a tremendous story for the parts that I read about it, that having to do with being a survivor and a thriver, and then now helping other people on that journey. And Dorris is senior ambassador of this amazing place called Thistle Farms, which is down near Nashville. And Dorris is going to tell us all about Thistle Farms. But Dorris, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's so great. It's great to have. And Dorris, when I was researching you, I was noticing that you are also a singer, right? Like you have this.
I love music. I love music.
Oh,
you know, my dad taught me that music is food for the soul. So I just love music.
I believe it. Yeah. So I may ask you to like sing us out or something like that then. But Dorris, why don't you start out by telling us a little bit about growing up and a little bit about your own past?
I will. I'll be happy to. So as you said, my name is Dorris Walker-Taylor, and I am a survivor leader at Thistle Farms. And, I'm at Thistle Farms. So just let me say this. At Thistle Farms, I work at a place where all the women's stories are much like mine. Our stories are more alike than different. There are some women who come into our community because they grew up in homes where addiction was prevalent. And that wasn't part of where addiction was prevalent. That wasn't part of my life. Had an amazing childhood. There are some women who come into our community because they were sold into human trafficking at a very early age. And in the beginning, that wasn't part of my story. Some women come in because they were touched by a family member or a stranger, and that molestation started that cycle of trauma in their lives. I had an amazing childhood, yet I landed at Thistle Farms with all the other survivors. And that's because I grew up in a little town north of Nashville, Tennessee, called White House, Tennessee. And it was an amazing little place to grow up as a child. It was I like to refer to White House as a little town like Mayberry. So a lot of times when I go out to the high schools and speak to the students, I'll say Thistle Farms is like Mayberry, and they're like, "What's Mayberry?" Because it kind of goes over their head. They're not old enough to know about it. But I had an amazing childhood. My mother and my father were humble believers in God. My dad taught me all there was to know about the Word of God, and my dad taught me that music is food for the soul. He would carry me to church and push me up front, and I would sing. So I got joy just out of singing, and I love gospel music. So that's why, my life was amazing. I was the youngest of the family. Amazing life. Until one day, out of the blue, a very troubled family member came into our family home, severely injured my mom and shot my father. I have never in my life seen anything like this before in my life. I remember that day. I still remember that day as if it happened yesterday. I was 12 years old. I'm now 65. But that day bore a hole in my spirit. I can remember screaming, and I ran over to my dad. And just as I got there, he fell. which resulted in my being partially trapped underneath my dying father. So my whole life changed that day. My dad died. My mom was severely injured, and she became the sole breadwinner of the family. So then I was sitting in class, and all I could do was remember that dreaded scene. So I started hanging out with the cool kids at school because my mom became the sole breadwinner. So she wasn't at home as much as I've always known her to be. So I found myself having a childhood addiction to marijuana at the age of 13. And by the time I was an adult, for me, marijuana was a gateway drug. So by the time I was an adult, I had a full-blown cocaine addiction that led me from the little small town of White House, Tennessee, all the way into Nashville. And that's where I began to live a truly inhumane lifestyle. I can remember going to jail and getting out of jail and going to jail and back and forth. It was a vicious cycle. And I remember trading myself as though I was some type of a commodity. I would trade myself to get out of the blistering cold weather. I trade myself to get out of the hot sun. And my life didn't have any value anymore. And, everything that was good and decent had been taken from me through my addiction.
Doris, can I ask you really quick?
Mhm.
What, like during this time, was it you were just trying to escape and deal with, had you at this point gotten any kind of like counseling, been able to talk to anybody about what had happened? Or it
I
sounds like you
never,
just kept running and you didn't stop. Is
I
that
just, that's it, started running and did not stop. And that addiction manifested itself from an addiction into selling myself as though I was a commodity. And it just manifested itself until I just bottomed out. So I never received any type of therapy, ever, ever. From the age of 12, when I started using marijuana, age of 13, when I started using marijuana, to the age of 54, when I came into the program, had no therapy. So I was just living. So, I would walk down the streets of Nashville, and my parents had taught me that, the Lord would make a way somehow. And they taught me how to pray, but I couldn't pray because I was too high and too inebriated. But I would walk down the streets of Nashville and I would recite the 23rd Psalm. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. At the end of the 23rd Psalm, it says, and I would dwell in the house of the Lord forever. So I would just cry out and I would say, God, if you just please come get me, I promise you, I will dwell in your house forever. Right after saying that prayer over and over again, I went to jail again. But this time when I went to jail, see, I had a good friend on the street and her name was Regina. And Regina had just disappeared. And I thought Regina was dead because our lives didn't hold any value on the street. So I'm in jail again, and I'm sitting there in my orange jumpsuit and my ugly orange jumpsuit, and my spirit is low, and I had my head down, and I looked up, and across the room I saw this lady, and she looked like she was glowing from the inside out. And I thought that can't be Regina. So Regina was there. But she was not there in jail as I was as an inmate. Regina had come to bring a word of hope. So Regina ran up to me as close as she could get and said, Doris, guess what? I got my life back. And I'm like, how did you do that? She said, I found this program. And I'm like, no, I can't do it. I've gone to so many 30-day recovery programs. But what was 30 days going to do for me when I had been addicted the vast majority of my life? She said, no, Doris, this is a long-term program. And I said, no, I can't do it, because I've gone to halfway houses and they're 90 days, but they charge $125 to $140 a week. And at that time in my life, the only way I knew how to make money was to go back out and trade myself for my rent.
And Doris, how old were you roughly at this time?
Well, by that time I had been on the streets. When I ran into Regina, I had probably been on the streets almost 20 years.
Okay.
At that time, because by that time, so I had been in my addiction altogether, my addiction, I was there for 26 years in addiction, but I was on the streets over 20 years, well over 20 years. So Regina said, no, Doris, I found this program and it's designed for women just like us and it's totally free. So she gave me the number. So usually when I get out of jail, I would go back to the streets. But this time I did something different. I went all the way back to White House, Tennessee. And by this time in my life, after being out there almost 20 years, I had two beautiful children. And I could not raise them because I couldn't take care of myself. But I thank God that my mom was taking care of my children. So I walked in and I'm tired and I'm smelly, and my kids just run up to me and hug me, even though I smelled horrible and looked horrible and was living horrible. My kids love me. So I came in to the room where I grew up as a child. See, home was not a safe place for me because if I sat in my bedroom and looked right out the window, I could see the very spot where my dad fell dead. So it wasn't a good place for me to come home. But I looked up and I had Regina's number in my hand, and I took my daughter's picture off the wall in my mom's house, and I scribbled that number on the back of it and put the picture back up there. And I thought, now that number is safe because everything I touch turns to dirt. I stayed there a few days, but I couldn't stay at home because I didn't know how to live life on life's terms without the use of drugs. So I got ready to leave. My brother said, Doris, you know what? You are killing our mom. Every time they find a woman dead on the street, our mom goes into a panic mode because she thinks it's you. Can you just please call our mom and let her know that you're okay? And I'm like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Didn't have any feelings. I was totally numb. And that's what I wanted to be, was numb. But I didn't want all the stuff that came along with it. So I went back to the street, but it was never the same again. I would be sitting in a crack house and something in my spirit would say, call your mom. I would be walking down the street and I'd be about to touch the door handle of a stranger's car to trade myself as though I was some type of a commodity again. And something in my spirit would say, Doris, call your mom. And so this kept going on. And I had been back. I hadn't been home in over a year. And finally one day I thought, okay, I'll call. So I called my mom and I said, hey, mom, this is Doris. I just wanted you to know I was doing okay. And I was not doing okay. She said, Doris, I need you to do one thing for me before I leave this world. She said, you know, the songs your dad taught you as a child, and I know the songs that you can sing. Can you come home and just be in this big, huge choir anniversary we have? And I said, yeah, I will. So I came home. But by the time I came home this time, I was bruised from the inside out. I had blisters on the bottom of my feet, and I was so tired. And I had just about lost my will to live because I didn't like myself and I didn't like my life and I didn't like what I had become. So I came into my mom's house and I just collapsed on the bed. And I woke up the next morning and I thought, oh yeah, that number. So I got my daughter's picture off the wall and I called Regina. I said, hey, Regina, this is Doris. Remember that program you told me about? Can I come in? So this was in 2009, ladies. She said, Doris, we have over 150 women on the waiting list. But if you would promise to call me back, I'll talk to the director and we'll get you in. That is the first time I had had any hope in my life in a couple of decades. So I walk up to the church in the afternoons and I rehearse with the choir. And the choir said, okay, Doris, the song we want you to sing is this song by Lemmy Battles, Chicago Mass Choir. You're looking at a miracle. I'm like, really, y'all? They said, yeah, you can sing it. I said, y'all, I can't sing You're Looking at a Miracle. I don't look like a miracle. I don't feel like a miracle. I can't. They said, yes, you can, Doris. You can sing it. So in the daytime, I would be at my mom's house and I would be trying to learn this song. And then my mom would be out in the kitchen. She was cooking and it would smell good. And my mom had a habit of walking around the house singing, humming hymn praises. So one morning I woke up and my mom was in the kitchen cooking. And I could hear her say, God, my baby's home. Don't let my daughter go back. If she goes back again, she's going to die. And my mom had a habit of singing songs like, oh, Lord, I want you to help me. And then she would come in my room and she would feed me.
Mm.
And I would get up in the evening and go to church. So I had this big choir anniversary and I sang and I praised and I did things unlike anything I had done in a couple of decades. But if you know about, if any of your listeners know anything about addiction, when you go to bed at night, you are dreaming that you're using, that you're settling yourself. And I wake up in the middle of the night and I'm in a hot and I'm sweating and I'm so exhausted. So after I came home from church that night, I thought I can't do this anymore. Every night I'm having using dreams and I'm so sick and tired of it. And I hadn't had any drugs in 2 weeks. And so I thought the next morning I'm going to get up and I'm going back home. I did what my mom asked me to do. So I got up the next morning, and usually when I come home for a little while, I can call people from the street and they would rush out to White House and pick me up because they knew I had money, they knew I had rested, and I was ready to make more money on the street. So this particular morning, I started calling folks. The first person I called didn't have enough gas to come get me. The next person I called had a flat tire. I'm like, what's going on? So I started panicking. I started calling. This is Doris. I'm leaving this message. When you get this message, come and get me. So I hung the phone up. My mom came around the corner. And that particular morning, my mom was praying harder than I've ever heard a human being pray in their life. And she's like, God, don't you let my baby go back out there, because if she go, she's dying. And she was screaming from the top of her voice, oh, Lord, I want you to help me. And she was really singing really loud. And she was praying with all her might. And she came around the corner in the bedroom, and I'm packing my clothes. And I'm putting my little raggedy clothes in the bag. And my mom says, Doris, where are you going? And I'm like, Mom, I'm going back. I did what you asked me to do. And she said, where are you going? She wouldn't take no for an answer. And I said, Mom, I'm going back. And I'm waiting on somebody to call me. I'm thinking, come on, please call me somebody, because I'm ready to get out of here. So my mom had tears running down her face. And if I had been in my right mind, that would have stopped me. But nothing could stop me when I wanted drugs. So I'm packing my clothes and the phone rang and I'm thinking, good, somebody's coming to get me. So I picked up the phone and I said, you ready to come get me?
It was Regina.
It was Regina.
It was Regina.
It was Regina. She said, yeah, I'm ready to come get you.
Wow.
So I thought I was getting a ride back to the street. But ladies, I got a ride into the will of God. And I came into Thistle Farms on a Monday morning, November the 9th, 2009. And now I can say, just like Regina, I got my life back. I got my life. It is amazing. So I'm crying, but not because I'm sad, because I have tears of joy. I got my life back. I haven't had a drink or a drug and haven't sold myself in 11 years.
So
I'm so grateful for my life.
Doris, okay, so Doris.
Yes.
I love your tears. I love this story. I'm like, both Ann and I are just like listening in awe. Okay, so like Doris, here's what strikes me. I have a whole page of notes I've written so far.
Okay.
But what strikes me is you mentioned how your childhood was wonderful, right? Until that one moment, right? Like everything kind of changed in a moment.
Yes.
And then there's Regina. And so it's like then you have this whole life where, you have the addiction, all this, and then you have that one person, right? Who's like, I'm coming to get you. You have your mom, right? Who's like, you're 53, 54, and she's like, my baby. And that like speaks to, like this mother's love that like, it's indescribable. But just like the fact that one thing can change our very lives. Like I think sometimes we as people, we tend to, we want to see like big patterns, and it's like, oh, things slowly happen. But I'm wondering, you had this moment of trauma, right? And then you had this person who came, and she's like, I know where you could get help. But through it all, here's the thread, Doris, is you still had that faith in God, right? And you had that mother who was home for you and who was waiting for you, right?
Yes.
Tell us about just those intervening decades that you were, you were just kind of going from thing to thing. And what kept you going during kind of these big endpoints? Like I would call them, like they're kind of like bookends.
So right.
Yeah.
So if I were to think back over all those years of my life, I was living a life of insanity. So a lot of parts of my life I don't even remember. I do remember going to jail. I do remember being sad. I do remember my insides just feeling like they were about to come out because I had this deep need for drugs. And so what I thought I did was found a way to calm my mind with marijuana. But then when for me, marijuana was a gateway drug. So when it stopped working, I found something I thought was better. I thought it was going to really just, make me not care. And it did just that. But I didn't care about myself anymore. And the drugs got me to where I didn't care about my children anymore. I didn't care about nothing but the next hit. So I thought I was getting away from the problem of seeing my dad die. And it manifested itself into a whole it was a snowball effect. So now you don't have a father. You can't get to see your mom. You don't have your children. You don't have a life. Your body is being sold as though it was a commodity. And I was being treated like I was less than human. And I was allowing all this. Anything goes as long as I could get the next hit. And then the next hit did not calm me. It made me more antsy and made me want it more. So it manifested itself. And then when I was able to, so right now, sitting here, I have this other drive in me right now that I've got to have. And that's the love of God. I gotta have it. I've got to have this peace and this serenity to keep myself clean. So there are some people who truly believe in NA and AA. And I did that for 2 whole years when I was in the program. But now my thing is just like, I have this amazing relationship with a man. I'm talking about God. I have this amazing relationship. And then so after I was about 5 years clean, I started going to the mall and I started seeing couples hand in hand. Everybody looked like they were in love. I'm like, I want to be a couple. So I go out, my picker is broke. I go out and get in a relationship with let's say a Freddy Cougar. And I thought, oh my God. So, but by the grace of God, I didn't lose my sobriety. I came out of it. And when I came out of it, I said, okay, God, I don't want to die alone. So God, I need you to find me a man. Find me a man who loves you, God, more than he could ever love me. Because if he loves you that much, he's going to treat me like a queen. And I need a man that's kind and gentle and soft-spoken. But it has to be a man that loves God. So that's what I ask God for.
Okay, can I just say you're giving me hope?
Yeah.
I mean, I love that phrase, my picker is broken. I'm like,
yeah, my picker broke. Yeah, my picker's broke. Yeah, so on the day that my dad died, in my childhood, my best friend was this little girl named Linda Taylor. My brother's best friend was this little skinny guy they called Jaybird. It was James Taylor. So here I am. God has carried me full circle. I'm sitting here right now in front of my computer in my new married home. I got married last year. And I'm married to the little Jaybird. So God has carried me full circle. Yeah. So God has carried me full circle. So now I am married to a man of God. I'm married to a man who knows all about my past. And he loves me he don't dislike me because of it. He loves me because he saw that I walked away from God and I returned to God. And that speaks volumes to him. So I have an amazing life now. And 3 doors down is where all my trauma started. And I used to always want to be a part of White House, Tennessee, because it's calm and it's pretty and it's nice. And now I got my life back. And God has placed me right back on this same road that I lived as a child. But now the only difference is I've got my joy back. So yeah, God is good. He's carried me full circle. Yes.
Oh man, thank you. Like, yeah, that gives me hope in so many different ways. Obviously you have courage. It takes a lot of courage to, even just live 3 doors down and, to come back. Some people wouldn't want to, but I have a friend and that also gives me hope. And he also was addicted and homeless and Yeah, he was on the streets, and now
Yeah.
he actually has his PhD and he's
Oh,
teaching
wow. Yeah.
theology. And so I think, wow. So when I walk along the streets and I do see people who are on the streets and struggling, I think you could also, be a future doctoral professor teaching theology.
Really? Yeah.
You know what I mean? That God isn't finished with us. Like that
That's
there's
right.
so
That's
I
right.
want to know, like, could you help us help us see differently who you were in
Mhm.
those meantime? And because it's not, you were still you throughout your whole life. Like,
I was. Yeah.
how can you
Yeah.
help us understand or change our perspective on you in those moments?
Yeah. So, if you see a woman out on the street that's selling herself, no little girl says, when I grow up, I want to be a prostitute. Nobody thinks that way. And it's just life. Life happens. And I've heard Becca Stevens say it takes a village. So if you have something like what happened to me, there was no one available or no one even thought to grab a hold of her and get her into therapy and teach her that it's okay and that things happen and show her how to come out of it in a healthy way. So there was nobody there for me. So it takes a village. So I challenge listeners to open up your heart. When you see someone on the street hopeless, they're actually a person and they actually have a story. We all have stories, be it good or bad. Everybody in this world has a story. So I challenge you just to maybe try to think in a positive way and maybe try to see if there's some way you can help them or some way you can just offer them a place to go. If you are aware of any way they can get, like Thistle Farms now has 46 sister organizations, so in around the country. So no matter where you are, there's hope. And I never knew that. I never knew there was a way out. I never knew people cared. I thought it was me against the world, but it's so not that way. People care for us. Thistle Farms loved me back to life. They didn't charge me. They didn't ridicule me. When I came in the program, I thought they were going to say, okay, Doris, what have you been doing? But they didn't. They asked me a very profound question. What happened to you? So in the very beginning, when I got there, I had 11 and a half teeth. It was not a good look. So they sent me and they got my teeth fixed. They sent me to therapy. Anything we need to become whole again, they do it. And it's all free to the survivor. So now I have an opportunity. I'm no longer trapped in a 10-block radius. And right before I came out of it, I got in the car with the wrong person and I was put in a hotel to be traded and back and forth. And that was human trafficking. So I had a touch of it all before I got out of it. But by the grace of God, I did get out of it. So there is like tonight, Thistle Farms is having this tea and justice party and it's free for everyone to join online. And it's for to celebrate women. Women are to be celebrated. Women are strong. And it is not that women deserve to be sold as though they are some type of commodity. So just take a second glance at that person standing on the street because they have a story and they too need to find a way out. Yeah.
Yeah. So Doris, I love this. I love that, Anne, that you asked that question. You made that comment because I think it's very profound. And it's because when you were talking, Doris, you were saying you were kind of sharing about all this negative narrative that you had in your head, right? Or like,
Yeah.
you didn't matter, it was kind of everything was pointless, whatever. But now, okay, here you are, 3 blocks away from your childhood home, and you're talking about having more joy than you've ever had. Like that's a significant shift that's happened there.
It has.
And I think part of it is this whole idea of, you're talking about community, right? And this whole idea of a safe space. Like I can't help but get away from that. Like what you were given was a safe place, I think, to heal, right? And to kind of start like kickstart that journey. So talk to us about the importance of safety and community, and that in terms of helping people who have been through trauma kind of kickstart their lives again. What does safety mean to you and community?
Okay, so it is good to believe in yourself, but it is powerful when you've got a whole community of people believing in you and telling you that you can. So when I came in the program, I wasn't locked up in a little cell. I wasn't put in a dirty crack house. They had this beautiful home for me. And they gave me a key. And giving me a key spoke volumes to me because I had no one had given me a key in a couple of decades, and understandably so, because they didn't trust me. But Thistle Farms Residential gave me a key. And then they would give us a stipend. They would give us like $45 every week. And it was for us to use for whatever we wanted to. And because I was always playing with paraphernalia, my hands were horrible. So I used my money to go get my nails done. But then they treated us lavishly. So that increased my self-esteem. And I was in a safe place. I could talk about what I had been through because they were my sisters for life, is what we call ourselves. They were there. So we started talking about stuff, and I realized I wasn't that bad of a person. I wasn't the only one selling myself. I found a way out. And then it was like each one teach one. So I could hear stories about other women who have come in the program who succeeded and got their life back. So I could see other women that were on the street with me that had just disappeared. And then when I came on the Thistle Farm side to work, I saw that they were managers of their company. I saw that they was managers and they were directors. So I could see that I thought I was the worst. They thought they was the worst, but it was safe. It was a safe spot for us to be there because we could share our stories. We could lean on each other. And then when we had a problem, believe me, somebody in that community has had the same problem. So when I said to somebody, you know what, in 2 years, I don't know what I'm going to do because nobody's going to trust me to give me an apartment. Well, when I went to get an apartment, she liked me. I was talking to her, and then she said, "Oh, I need to run a background check." And I thought, "Oh my God." So I said to her, "Okay, so when you run the background check, the person on paper is not going to be the person that's sitting in front of you." So I had an opportunity to tell her what I had been doing for the last 2 years and tell her about Thistle Farms and tell her that I almost had 3 years clean. And she gave me a chance. So then I was able to get other ladies that graduated the Thistle Farms program to come to the apartment complex where I was. So it's like each one teach one. And then the court system it works with Thistle Farm. It's a safe place. When you go to court, they don't always lock you up. They give you the option to come to Thistle Farms. And some people take it rather than go to jail. But when they get there and they realize just how you can get your life back, all I wanted was to become normal. That was before I realized that normal is no more than a cycle on the washing machine. There is no normal. But I wanted to become normal. I wanted to become normal again. And I found a safe place to heal from all my trauma. Yeah.
You know, Doris, I mean, I can, I'm going to speak for me, and I mean, I'm probably going to speak for other people here when I say that I hate that you had to go through what you had to go through, but there's a part of me that is almost like envious of what you have now. I mean, I look at what God has given you, like in terms of community and joy and purpose
Yes.
and a
Yes.
mission in life and empathy to, you know, to work with other people who have been hurt. And a lot of people go through life and they don't have any of those, right? I mean,
Right.
somehow, miraculously, you have been gifted with a lot of things that people just want. Like they just long for these kind of things. And you had to go through a really rough trail. But
Yes. Yes.
now, but now it's like, I mean, it's like you talk and I'm like, I want that. I want that kind of community where it's like a sisterhood forever.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and yeah, I mean, it's incredible to me of the redemptive. Your story is so redemptive. Um, I mean,
Yes.
just powerful. Okay, so let's quickly talk about Thistle Farms though, because you're talking about it, but um, we want to learn just like the different parts of it, right? So Thistle Farms
Yes.
has refuge homes, right? Like kind of transitional homes. Tell
Mhm.
us about that, and then tell us about, are there other pieces to it as well? And then
I would-
what you do is, what does a senior ambassador do there?
Okay. Okay, so Thistle Farms is a nonprofit social enterprise, and it is designed for women just like me, for survivors of human trafficking, prostitution, addiction, and abuse. That is what we're there for. So, in the beginning, in 1997, our founder is Becca Stevens. She's an Episcopal priest. Becca herself was molested by a man in the church that vowed to take care of the family once her dad had died and he was a minister. So she says she doesn't compare her story to us, but she knows all too well that it takes a village to raise, to help somebody. The Episcopal women held on to her, and that's why she didn't go down the road we went down. So Thistle Farms has a lot of different entities. It has the cafe at Thistle Farms that's run by Survivor, an amazing cafe. It has the social enterprise, which is the manufacturing facility and the marketing and all the things like that. It has that. But the heart of the program for me, because I am a survivor, is we have 5 houses in Nashville. We have 46 sister organizations around the country. And that's where women can come off of the street, live free for 2 years, get free therapy, free mental, free dental, get all the things they need to be put back together again, to become whole again. And the best part of it for me was the therapy, because I got to go to sexual assault center and talk about all what I was going through and what I had gone through. And they gave me a different perspective of it. Perspective is an amazing thing. So I'm the same person that walked the street, but I don't feel like I've been a hooker. I feel like I have been blessed with my life. So it's perspective. They taught me how to put a different perspective on what my life was. So Thistle Farms makes these amazing products. So when we first opened up in 1997, the women were staying clean. They were getting their lives back. They were going to court and getting their record sponged, but they were dirt poor. And I know this all too well, because we lose absolutely everything we own in our addictions. So when the women would go out and look for jobs, nobody would hire us because of our background. So Becca Stevens started the social enterprise of Thistle Farms in 2001, and that's where we make all these amazing bath and body products. I don't know if you can see this or not, because I don't know if I can get it where you can see, but this is a candle. But we have lotions and soaps and candles, and every product we make is made with essential oil. The products are actually made with essential oil. The products are natural, and they're made by survivors. So when I came into the Thistle Farms community in 2000, I came to the program in 2009. I started working in 2010 because my mom died 3 months after. My mom was 96 years old, and she passed 3 months after I got in the program. And it was like she was waiting for her baby to be okay. And then she went on home to God. So when I first got to the program, my job was to pour lip balms. So I would mix up lanolin oil and almond oil and beeswax, and I would pour the liquid into this little tiny tube. And I thought, oh my God, I'm gonna die. But I stuck with it because I remember we prosper by the work of our hands. So my next job at Thistle Farms was to work in the packing department. And my job was to take all the products, put them in the bins, and send them out for the women to go tell their stories. So I was 3 years clean, but my mind hadn't fully cleared up because I done a lot of damage to my mind, and I would forget something. So then I had my joy in my life. So I wrote this little song called I'm a Thistle Farmer, and it names off every single product that we own. So I would walk around like, I'm a Thistle Farmer, and Thistle Farms is where I work. And it names off the song names off all the products that we make. And that's how I would learn to pack the products. So I would pack the products. Then my next job at Thistle Farms was to be a director over events. So that's where I would make cold calls, and people would call me, and I would set up travel, and I would make arrangements for the airplane tickets, and we would fly out. So I was trapped in a 10-block radius for well over 20 years. But now I have been to every state in the United States, and I have been out of the country with Becca Stevens. So I got my life back fully. So my job as director of events, I would go around and travel. And that's what we did. So now the pandemic is here. I can't travel anymore. So now they have made me the senior ambassador at Thistle Farms. So they thought, okay, Doris, we've noticed you love to talk. So your job, is going to be to talk about Thistle Farms. I'm like, I'll do it. So I love it. So now I get to, when people come into the Thistle Farms building to shop in the front store, because we have a shop at Thistle Farms, or if they go in the cafe, I'm able to walk around and talk to the customers and talk to them. And when we have conference rooms where people can come in and have their conference there, I go in and tell them the story of Thistle Farms. So that's my job now. So my job now is I do a lot of podcasts, I do interviews, I talk to people at Thistle Farms. If they want a tour, I have Jennifer give a tour at Thistle Farms. So now I am the senior ambassador, and I talk about Thistle Farms, and I love to talk about how each product is made and all the ingredients are in them. So yeah, so I'm a true Thistle farmer now. So yeah, so that's what I do now. But Thistle Farms is an absolutely amazing organization. It gives women jobs. We don't know that we can support ourselves without selling ourselves now, and that's just the bottom line of it. If you walk into the Thistle Farms Cafe, we have a sea of cups over your head when you walk in, because when we first opened the cafe, it was going to be a tea room. So Becca Stevens sent out a request on social media for people to donate teacups and saucers and send a story with them. We got an overwhelming response. So we got all these teacups. So now we made a sea of teacups. So there's a story in every cup. So we love stories, and we heal from our stories. So that's what we do at Thistle Farms. It's
and Doris, really quick, why is it called Thistle Farms?
Okay, so Thistle. So I have to tell people, because I grew up on a farm before my parents moved to where they were. So I have to let people know I do not work on a farm, but Thistle Farms. So thistles are weeds. Can't believe I don't have a picture of a thistle. Thistle Farms are purple at the top, and they have a glorious purple center, but they have briars around them. So thistles are very prickly. When we come into the program, we're rough around the edges, but give us time when we bloom into a glorious purple flower. Thistles are a resilience weed. It's a survivor weed, and we're survivors. Thistles grow through concrete. Thistles survive drought. And then we call it the farm, because wherever we go or wherever we talk, we try to plant seeds of hope. So that's why we call it Thistle Farms. So Thistle Farms was the only flower I saw when I was on the street, because thistles grow in the alleyways. And thistles grow in really bad conditions. And I was always in really bad areas and really bad conditions. So that's why we call it Thistle Farms. Yeah. And thistles are very healing, because we used to make thistle paper. And we would take, Becca Stevens does not believe that everything God made has to be good for something. So we would take old t-shirts and old paper, and we would pick thistles, and the billowy top of the thistle kind of is similar to a dandelion, but we would pick the billowy part out of the thistle, and we put it in this big machine called a critter and work it up. Well, some of the women come in off the street and their bodies are really tired and their bodies are really sick. So one of the girls had a really high viral load. And as she worked in the milk thistle and worked in the thistle, it healed her viral load. So these products are very healing as well. So Thistle Farms is an absolutely amazing organization. We have like lotions and soaps and candles, body butters and lotions. We have a global initiative now, where we not only have people in the United States, we have people around the world. So we have this tea from San Juan Casolos, Mexico. It's like moringa tea. It has vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin D, potassium, stabilize the blood sugar, increase your memory. What sold me on the tea is that it has an ingredient that slows down the development of wrinkles. So I'm like, okay, start drinking, Doris. But yeah, we have all these. We have a little sock monkey from Peru, and the women in Peru make these little sock monkeys called the sock monkey product, and we sell it for them, and that gives them a way to support themselves when they come out of human trafficking without returning back to human trafficking in order to support themselves. So we have all sorts of products, healing oils and all sorts of things. Yeah.
Well, Doris, yeah, that's you guys have a lot of different initiatives going on, and I would encourage all of our listeners to order stuff, right? You guys do shipping.
Please.
And so what is your website and where are you on?
thistlefarms.org, www.thistle, THISTLE, farms, FARMS.org, thistlefarms.org. Yes.
Okay.
Please go online and shop.
Yeah, and we will link to that in our show notes. And Dorris, what a story. I mean, wow, wow, wow. I don't even have words to say how amazed I am about with, just the healing in your life and how you're giving that back to the world now. And I could speak for Ann, but like I'm just so much more joyful. Even after talking to you, I feel full of joy.
Thank you.
And so just keep up the great work, Dorris.
I
And
will. Thank you so much.
wow. And we would encourage all of you guys, go head over to their website and support them and find ways to see people around you that maybe are unseen, and to
Yes.
learn about, educate yourself on just what it's like to be in an addiction or an abusive
Yes.
relationship and deal with
Yes.
trauma. There's lots of ways every day that we can become better people and become the hero makers that we were made to be. So I hope you guys love this episode. Like we said, go back, listen to Rebecca Bender's episode and share this with other people. Share Dorris's story.
Yes.
And talk about Thistle Farms in your networks. And thanks for joining us. We'll see you guys next time.
Bye. Thanks.